Judge Napolitano's with us, though.
Hello, Jamie. How are
Settle
you?
it all out.
I know to you I may look old. Hope this statement ain't too bold, but here comes the judge. Here comes the judge.
JudgeNap.com. How you doing, friend?
I'm doing very well, young man. How are you?
Doing great. I want to get to the Gorsuch story and all that will be going on Friday, but I want to ask you first regarding Adam Housley's reporting and the Susan Rice issue and the unmasking. The leak is what is illegal, not the unmasking. Correct or incorrect?
Let me explain.
Okay.
The people who have access to state secrets, like the name of an American accidentally or intentionally surveilled, can only unmask that name. So it comes in as American 1 or American A or American with a code. Can only unmask that name and learn the true identity of the American if it is necessary for national security purposes to understand the conversation. So in other words, we have a conversation with the Russian ambassador and American number 1. The conversation doesn't make sense to us unless we know who American number 1 is. That name can be unmasked. But if the unmasking is done for a non-national security purpose, like, hey, President Obama, you won't believe what Donald Trump and Paul Manafort were talking about last Tuesday. Or if the unmasking done for a proper purpose is revealed to those who are not entitled to know it. Either of those is the crime of espionage. Espionage, the failure to safeguard state secrets, because the name of an American person incidentally or intentionally surveilled by the intelligence community is protected by the highest level of protection we have, called top secret. That's the same crime that Hillary Clinton probably committed when she put top secret emails in a non-secure venue.
So
Susan Rice is in very, very, very hot water. This must be passed on to the FBI for a criminal investigation.
So when Susan Rice, is it a matter of her asking for the unmasking or her accessing the files where she can unmask it herself? Because otherwise, would the intelligence apparatus, whoever it happened to be, if they're asked, wouldn't they say, well, no, we can't unmask that name? How do you think that would happen?
That's where it gets very dicey, because the National Security Agency is in the military. And the president commands the military as commander-in-chief. They cannot resist an instruction from the president. So if she says, the president wants to see a transcript between, I'm making this up hypothetically, Donald Trump and Paul Manafort on the night before Donald Trump gave his acceptance speech at the Republican National Convention in Cleveland. The military arm, the NSA, is going to cough that transcript up. They're not going to worry about masking or unmasking, and they're going to assume that she and he has a legitimate purpose for it.
So
obviously, that would be a felony.
Right.
The use of masked material for a non-national security purpose, like politics, revenge, embarrassment, even idle curiosity, is a felony.
All right, so
that's how highly protected this material is.
Okay, so those who are defending, and people keep in mind that Susan Rice was the national security advisor. She wasn't the president's secretary. Okay,
correct.
But those who defend her say, well, she was obviously wanting to know about somebody clandestinely plotting with the Russians for an espionage attack on the U.S. So of course she would need to know, because she wanted to make sure she had to have the name of somebody who might be jeopardizing the security of this country.
We don't know, but Congressman Nunes and Congressman Schiff do exactly what Susan Rice saw. So if she was accessing, again my hypothetical, conversations between Trump and Manafort about Trump's speech, and she shared that with anybody, that's espionage.
Because they said
if she was accessing a conversation between Michael Flynn and the Russian ambassador, and she exposed Flynn as American number 1, that's espionage. If she's accessing the conversation between General Flynn and the Russian ambassador, and she reveals it to the president in a national security context, that's her job.
Right. So, and according to Nunes, if you believe him, and if you actually kind of have to read between the lines with Schiff.
According to whom? I didn't hear what you said.
I'm sorry, Devin Nunes. If you believe him, and also Rand Paul now, for that matter, and you read between the lines with Adam Schiff, who apparently now is not talking very much, they say what they saw has nothing to do with Russia.
Correct. It probably has to do with curiosity, embarrassment, revenge, and politics. Now, let's just put another hat on. Could you imagine if President George W. Bush and National Security Advisor or Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice did this to President-elect Barack Obama and National Security Advisor designee Susan Rice? The political earthquake would still be palpable today.
So where does this go? Because I'm right now our local.
Well, she needs to be investigated by the FBI, whose hands are not entirely clean in this, because Jim Comey testified under oath. He knew of no surveillance at Trump Tower. We now have proof that there was surveillance at Trump Tower. It's inconceivable that he didn't know about it. So let's put aside his personal issue there about whether or not he told the truth. His reputation is sinking like a rock in a pond the past 10 months. But nevertheless, the FBI has to investigate this because this is potential espionage. And this can be investigated by Jeff Sessions. This has nothing to do with the Russians. This is what was the White House doing, poking around Trump Tower.
Wow. Well, I can just imagine. But the problem with this story now, though, is I have, for instance, the local paper here, the Post-Dispatch, page 16 is where this Susan Rice story is. I believe I saw Laura on Fox News this morning, and I think she was thumbing through the Washington Post, and I think that was similarly
she couldn't
buried.
find it until she got to about 16 or 20. She's correct,
right,
and you're correct. But the mainstream media should be all over this because this is a Watergate in magnitude that a sitting president would do this to a president-elect, or he wasn't even the president-elect when this started. Look, on Saturday, The Guardian of London reported that British intelligence and American NSA have been surveilling Donald Trump together and General Flynn since 2015. Now, that's long before he was the nominee and certainly before he was the president-elect. So if the NSA was surveilling Trump back then, don't you think their bosses, Susan Rice and Barack Obama, knew about it?
Well, and then you couple this story with the history of, in my opinion, abuse of our surveillance apparatus on the part of the Obama administration, whether you want to talk about James Rosen, whether you want to talk about spying on Merkel, whether you want to talk about accessing AP phone records, whether you want to talk about PRISM, which is a completely other abuse where they were looking at Google records and things like that, then this represents just another chapter in a history of the Obama administration abusing our surveillance apparatus.
Your humble correspondent has been arguing for years that there's too much spying going on, that it's unconstitutional because it's not based on suspicion. It's un-American because in America we have the right to be left alone. And this should appeal to the spying apparatus and the neocons. It's ineffective because it's information overload. It's too much information. The genius of the Fourth Amendment, you can only spy on people as to whom there's probable cause, works both ways. It keeps those of us who are suspicion-free away from the government's crosshairs, and it forces the government to focus on people as to whom there is suspicion, rather than wasting their time with the rest of us. And a lot of these spying authorities, not all, but a lot of them expire this fall. It's time for a great national debate.
Yeah.
Because FISA has failed miserably to protect innocent Americans from the curious eyes of politicians who control the government spying apparatus. That's clear as a bell.
Judge Napolitano, we didn't get to Gorsuch, but still, we needed to get to this, so thank you so much.
The next time you and I talk about Gorsuch, he will be Justice Gorsuch of the Supreme Court of the United States.
Right on. All we need to know, my friend. At Judge Knapp, judgenap.com. Have a blessed rest of your week, my friend.
Love you, Jamie. All
Thanks
the
so
best.
much. Love you too. That's Judge Napolitano. So very interesting. I just tweeted out the article on the Obama administration's long history of surveillance abuse. It's on my Twitter right now, JAllman971.
It's here.